Welcome back to another episode of Smooth Brain EDH, where we make the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. We've got another high-power commander game for you all, so let's see what our players brought to the table. First up is Chandler on Sorin of House Markov. This Orzhov deck is focused around life gain, using Sorin as life gain and removal, while assembling ways to drain a gain out the table. Next up is Matt on Animar Soul of Elements. This teamer deck is all about creatures, slaving some powerful threats to close the game, using Animar to cheat on those casting costs and become a giant beater. Third is Seth on Najeela the Blade Blossom. Seth built this deck with the restriction to only use borderless cards, throwing as many shiny warrior cards in there to slam it to his opponents. Last is Sam on Negan the Cold-Blooded. This Mardu deck focuses around opponents sacrificing creatures to generate value off of Negan's ability to set up wins with cards like Revel and Riches and Reckless Fireweaver. We're about to hop right into the game. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to the channel. We have links to our social media pages, our free public Discord server, the Decklists, and our Patreon in the description. Part of the Dragon Shield, check out our affiliate link in the description if you're looking to pick up any sleeves, deck boxes, or playmats, and use code SMOOTH5 at checkout for 5% off your order. Now, on to the gameplay.
Alright, looks like Matt wins the die roll. He'll start off with a Misty Rainforest, and he'll fetch for a Tropical Island, and then tap that for 1 to cast a Llanowar Elves. The turn is passed to Seth, and he'll start off by shocking in a Breeding Pool. Then he'll tap it for 1 to match Dork for Dork with an Ignoble Hierarch. The turn is then passed. Sam matches Matt's energy with a turn 1 fetch. It's a Marsh Flats, and he declares he's gonna go get Savai Triumph, and then he'll pass to Chandler while searching. Chandler matches Seth's energy with a turn 1 shock, his being a Godless Shrine, and he'll use it to cast an Ocelot Pride. Then he'll pass. Matt's able to just play a mountain and cast Animar on his turn, and then he'll pass to Seth. And he'll start his turn off with a Rogran Triumph as his land drop. He'll then tap his Ignoble Hierarch for a red to cast Burnout Bastronaut. His engines have started. He'll then pass the turn to Sam, and he'll start off with a mountain, and he'll use it to cast Soul Ring. Sorry his lands are down there, he has a massive playmat, he'll move them up here in a second. Now with the help of the Soul Ring, he's also able to cast Smuggler's Share, and then pass to Chandler. He will play a Flooded Strand as lane for turn, and then he'll cast his Soul Ring, then move to combat, and swing for 1 First Strike lifelink over at Seth, who doesn't block it, so Chandler will then pass the turn, and he has to run off to go find a cat token. Anyways, let's move to Matt's turn. He'll start off with a Thundering Paws as land for turn, and he'll Surveil 1. It stays on top, then he'll cast Benevolent Hydra, X is 1. There is an Animar trigger. Matt will then move to combat, and he swings for 2 Commander over at Sam, who literally cannot block it. He'll then pass the turn to Seth, who will shock in a Hollowed Fountain, then cast Commander's Sphere. He'll then tap for 2 and cast a Johnny, Nakatl Pariah, and he'll get a Cat Warrior on ETB. Seth will then move to combat and swing for 1 Menace at Chandler, who can't block it, so his speed increases to 2. The turn is then passed to Sam. He'll start off with a Prismatic Vista and immediately fetch with it. He decides to find a swamp off of this, and then he'll cast his commander, Negan. It resolves, and there's a Negan ETB trigger on the stack. Sam says he's most scared of Matt and Seth right now, and Matt mentions he's not likely to get very far in the coming turns, so Negan triggers pointed at Seth. Okay, let's see how this works. Sam and Seth are both going to secretly choose a creature controlled by Seth, then reveal both at the same time, and each chosen creature is sacrificed. Okay, I see what's going on here. It's a mind game. Sam wants to make Seth sacrifice 2 creatures, Seth only wants to sacrifice 1. And on the count of 3, both are revealed. Sam chose a Johnny, and Seth chose his Naya Warrior. So they're both sacrificed, and Sam gets 2 treasure tokens. Sam will then pass the turn, and Chandler will stop on instep to fetch with Flooded Strand. He gets Shadowy Backstreet and Surveils 1. Said Surveil will put Soul's Attendant to the graveyard, and then will move to his turn. He'll start off by tapping for 1 white and casting Authority of the Consuls. Then he'll tap for 3 and cast Heliod, the Sun Crowned. After this, he'll move to combat and swing for 1 lifelink at Seth, who takes it, and upon gaining life, Chandler will put a 1/1 counter on his 1/1 cat. He'll then pass to Matt and make another cat, and Matt will play a mountain, then cast Doubling Season. That's very scary. Anyways, he'll pass the turn to Seth, who starts off with a Professional Facebreaker. It enters tapped, and Chandler will gain a life. And when he does, Heliod will put a +1/+1 counter on Chandler's other cat token. After this, Seth will cast Rada, Heir to Keld. It also enters tapped, Chandler will gain another life, and put another counter on another cat. After this, Seth will move to combat, and he'll swing 1 Menace over at Sam, and with the Exalted trigger, it becomes 2. Sam will take it, and Seth will make a treasure token. And for what it's worth, his speed goes up to 3. The turn is then passed to Sam, and he will immediately tap for 5 to cast Actual Factual Shieldred. When she ETBs, each of Sam's opponents have to sacrifice a non-token creature or planeswalker, so that's going to be Ocelot Pride from Chandler, Benevolent Hydra from Matt, and Rada from Seth. Before it fully resolves though, Chandler remembers to gain a life and that she enters tapped. This will also put a 1/1 counter on another cat, and Matt will also activate his Benevolent Hydra to remove a 1/1 counter from it and put 4 +1/+1 counters on Animar because Benevolent Hydra and Doubling Season. Anyways, the ability will now officially resolve, and Negan will trigger 3 times, making 3 treasure tokens. Sam is not done with the sacrifices yet. He'll cast Demon's Disciple. Everyone sacrifices another creature. This also triggers Authority of the Consoles, which will trigger Heliod again, so another +1/+1 counter on a cat. The Disciple will sacrifice itself, Chandler a cat, Matt his Llanowar Elves, and Seth his Ignoble Hierarch. And Sam will also get 3 more treasures. After this, he'll play an Arid Mesa as land for turn, and then he'll pass the turn to Chandler. Chandler will begin his turn with an Urborg as land for turn, and then he'll move to combat and swing for 4 over at Sam, who decides to just take it. He'll then just pass the turn, but Sam will stay on end step to sacrifice 3 treasures to cast Anguished Unmaking on Matt's Doubling Season, so it's exiled and Sam loses 3 life. We'll then move to Matt's turn, where the first thing he does is play Tanglespan Bridgeworks, tapped. He'll then move to combat and smack Sam for 6 with Animar, putting 6 more commander on him. Then he'll just pass the turn to Seth. He will immediately tap for 3 and cast Najeela. She enters tapped, Chandler gains a life, Heliod will put a counter on the cat. Seth will then move to combat, and he swings his Menace Goblin at Sam and his Menace Human at Chandler. 2 Najeela triggers go on the stack, and Chandler decides to respond to them by flashing in Orcish Bowmasters. The ETB trigger will ping Matt for 1, and he'll amass 1. Then Seth Najeela triggers will resolve. Those warriors enter tapped and attacking, 1 at Chandler, 1 at Matt. Chandler will gain 2, and then put 2 counters on his Orcish Bowmasters. Chandler will then put his 3/3 and his 1/1 in front of Professional Facebreaker. Then moving to damage, all of Seth's opponents will take 1 damage, and then the Orc Army and Professional Facebreaker will die. And while it does die, it still sees damage dealt to each of his opponents, so he'll make 3 treasure tokens. Post-combat, Seth will play a tapped Steam Vents as land for turn. Then he passes to Sam, who will fetch on instep with Arid Mesa for a Raucous Theater. Surveil stays on top. Then we'll move to his turn, where he'll play a Mountain. Then he'll use all of his mana except for 1 treasure to cast Meat Hook Massacre, X is 6. Chandler decides to go ahead into Fairy's Protection to save his creatures. Then it resolves. Everything gets -6/-6 till end of turn. When creatures die, Sam will gain 5 life, and his opponents will lose 2. Well, except for Chandler. The turn is then passed to said Chandler. And he'll start off by playing Monumental Hinge, then he'll tap for 5 and cast Sanguine Bond. That's scary. He'll then move to combat and swing for 5 over at Sam, and then 3 over at Seth, and they both just take the damage. The turn is then passed to Matt, and he'll just play an Exotic Orchard and pass, because his Animar does not feel safe with a Sam on the board. Alright, well then, now on Seth's turn, he'll start off with a Reconnaissance. Then he'll cast a Miri, Authority trigger, and a Heliod trigger. And also a Sanguine Bond trigger, which targets Matt. Then Seth will cast Quorum, and all these triggers will happen again, Sanguine Bond targeting Sam. The turn is then passed to Sam, and he'll start off by recasting Negan. ETB trigger targets Chandler. Understandably so. They both secretly write down their choices, and then on 3 reveal. They both chose Orcish Bowmasters. So it's sacrificed, and Sam will get a treasure off of Negan. Chandler also remembers Authority of the Consoles, which triggers Heliod and Sanguine Bond, and that Bond trigger will target Sam, which is cancelled out by the Meat Hook trigger he gets. The turn is then passed to Chandler. He'll start off by casting an Arcane Signet, then he'll move to combat and swing for 7 at Seth. Obviously, Seth can't block, so before damage, Chandler will activate Heliod's activated ability to give his 7/7 lifelink. So when Seth takes 7, he'll gain 7. And then Sanguine Bond will drain Matt for 7. And Chandler will also remember his counter here in a bit. The turn is then passed to Matt, and he'll just land go again, this time with a command tower. On Seth's turn, he'll just recast Najeela. She enters tapped, Chandler gains a life, Seth is drained for 1, and Cat gets a counter. He'll then move to combat and swing for 7 over at Chandler. There's a couple attack triggers. 2 warriors are made that also go at Chandler, but he'll gain 2, drain Seth for 2, and miss Heliod triggers. Then Quorum makes everybody mill a card. Matt and Seth each mill a land, Chandler mills Bloodletter of Aclazotz, and Sam will mill Mayhem Devil. Chandler will then take 9 damage in combat, and Seth will move to his second main. And here's the thing, at the end of combat, he announces that he activates Reconnaissance on his attacking creatures, but forgets to actually untap them. But luckily, everybody does remember him say it, so later he'll untap them. Anyways, he'll play the land Matt milled, which is a Rejuvenating Springs, and then the turn is passed to Sam. He'll start off with Luxury Suite as land for turn. Then he'll move to combat and swing Negan over at Chandler, who just has to take it. And then the turn is passed. On Chandler's upkeep is when Seth remembers his creatures should be untapped. Chandler will then move to combat and swing at Seth anyways. Seth blocks with a warrior, and before damage, Chandler will activate Heliod to gain 9 life. And then Sanguine Bond triggers, and Seth is drained for 9. The turn is then passed to Matt, and he'll recast Animar. Then he'll tap for 2 and cast a Walking Ballista, X is 1, and Animar will trigger. Sam and Chandler are having a nice little conversation, and all of Chandler's enchantments are forgotten about. Anyways, the turn is passed to Seth, and he'll immediately full swing at Chandler. 4 more warriors are created, which attack Chandler. It'll gain him 4 life. Seth is drained for 4, and then some Heliod triggers will be remembered here in a second. After this, before damage, Seth will activate Najeela's ability. He'll untap all of his attacking creatures, and they'll gain Trample, Lifelink, and Haste. Still before damage though, Chandler decides to tap for 1 white and cast Swords to Plowshares, targeting his 13/13 cat. He'll gain 13 life, and Sanguine Bond will then, at instant speed, kill Seth. On his way out, Seth remembers that everybody should have to mill a card. Matt mills Oko, Sam mills Plaguecrafter, and Chandler mills Enduring Tenacity. Then, with Seth being dead, we pass through his turn and move to Sam's. And he'll start off by tapping for 5 and casting Sir Conrad the Grim. Authority trigger, and Sam is drained. Negan is then swung over at Chandler for 4 more commander, and then the turn is passed. And Chandler will immediately tap for 4 and cast a Walking Ballista, X is 2. In case you didn't know, that is an infinite combo with Heliod. It resolves too, but Sam has been holding up mana for a while now, so Chandler decides to not immediately go for it. 1 piece of interaction can stop this combo, but if he gets to his next turn, he can actually respond to the interaction and still win. So he'll pass the turn to Matt. Matt really can't do anything here, so he'll just pass to Sam, who will tap for 4, then cast Anointed Procession, and then move to combat. 9 is swung at Chandler, and he'll just take it. Sam will then activate Sir Conrad once, and Matt hits a Hydra, so Chandler and Matt will take a damage. Sam will then do it again, and this time it hits a Gisa, so 1 more damage. Then the turn is passed. Alright, Chandler's gonna go for it now. He'll pay 2 to Heliod to give Walking Ballista lifelink. Then the Ballista is activated, and 1 damage is pointed at Sam. Sam will respond with a Deadly Rollick, attempting to exile the Ballista. But Chandler can just respond to this by paying 4 mana into Walking Ballista to put another 1/1 counter on it, and then he'll remove another counter, pointing 1 damage at Sam. It resolves, Sam takes the damage, Chandler gains a life, Heliod puts a counter back on. There are no further responses, so rinse and repeat till Sam and Matt are dead. And you know what that means? That makes Chandler and Sorin, even though he was never cast, the winners. Congratulations. Welcome one, welcome all to the end of the video. How exciting! I'm not gonna lie to you all, everybody got to do some pretty cool things that game. Sam had pretty good control in the early game, Chandler took over later, and Seth would have been really scary there if Chandler hadn't killed him at instant speed. He was about to gain a lot of life back off that lifelink. Anyways, let us know what you guys thought down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That's enough out of me. I hope you all have a smooth day.